There was a moment when every human alive could have fit inside a single modern stadium. You are descended from the ones who stayed. Look around you today. 8 billion people. We fill cities that stretch to the horizon, fly across oceans, and leave our footprints on the moon. It feels as though our presence on this planet is permanent, inevitable, and infinite. But if you could travel back in time, about 70,000 years ago, you would find a world where the human story came within a hair's breadth of ending forever. You would find a world where the night was cold, the air was toxic, and only a few thousand of your ancestors were left, clinging to survival in a darkened landscape. This is the story of the day. Humanity almost vanished, and how we clawed our way back from the edge of the abyss. To understand the crisis, we have to look at your DNA. If you study a group of chimpanzees living in a single forest in Central Africa, you will find more genetic diversity among them than you will find in the entire 8 billion members of the human race. We are, genetically speaking, remarkably identical. This is a scientific puzzle. For a species that has colonized every corner of the globe, we should have vast genetic variations. The only way to explain this homogeneity is through what geneticists call a population bottleneck. At some point in our prehistory, our species was drastically reduced in number. The gene pool was squeezed through a tiny opening, and only a tiny handful of people made it through to pass on their genes to the future. For decades, scientists debated what caused this bottleneck, and many pointed their fingers at a tiny island in Indonesia and a mountain named Toba. Around 74,000 years ago, Mount Toba did not just erupt. It exploded in the largest volcanic event on Earth in the last 2 million years. To visualize Toba, do not think of a typical volcano spewing lava. Think of a supervolcano, a subterranean chamber of magma so massive that when it blew, it collapsed the Earth above it, creating a crater 30 miles wide. Toba ejected nearly 3,000 cubic kilometers of ash and rock into the atmosphere. It shot debris 40 miles high, straight into the stratosphere. The ash cloud spread west, blanketing the Indian subcontinent in a layer of dust up to 6 inches thick. It blocked out the sun. For years, the planet was plunged into a volcanic winter. Temperatures dropped globally by up to 15 degrees Celsius in some regions. Summer vanished. Forests withered, grasslands dried up, and the animals that grazed on them died in droves. And in Africa, where your ancestors lived, the sky turned a dim, permanent gray. Imagine being one of those early humans. You wake up, but there is no sunrise, only a heavy chemical haze that burns your lungs. The rivers are choked with gray ash. The herds of wildebeest and antelope you have tracked for generations are gone, their carcasses rotting on the dry savanna. The plants you gather are shriveled and dead. Every morning is a desperate search for food in a dying world. Genetic evidence suggests that during this prolonged volcanic winter, the global population of Homo sapiens plummeted. We did not just lose cities or nations. We did not have them yet. We lost entire lineages. Day by day, band by band, hunger and cold took their toll. According to genetic models, our population dwindled to perhaps as few as 10,000, or even just a few thousand, breeding individuals. Some models suggest there were only about 1,000 reproducing couples left on the entire planet. Think about that number. If you took every single human being alive on Earth 70,000 years ago, you could have sat them all in a small local stadium. If a single disease had swept through that group, or if a severe drought had lasted 1 decade longer, the human experiment would have ended. The Neanderthals would have inherited the Earth, or the Denisovans, or perhaps no one at all. How did those few thousand ancestors of yours survive the darkness? They did not survive because they were stronger than the beasts. They survived because they were more cooperative, more creative, and more desperate. In the coastal regions of South Africa, at places like Pinnacle Point, archaeologists have found evidence of what your ancestors did during the crisis. When the inland game vanished, they moved to the edges of the continent. They learned to harvest the ocean. They tracked the tides to gather shellfish, a reliable source of protein that did not care about the volcanic winter. They also did something else. It is during this bottleneck period that we see the first explosion of complex human culture. Your ancestors began heat-treating silkrete rock to make sharper, more precise microblades. They created the first projectile weapons, early bows and arrows, allowing them to hunt from a safe distance. More importantly, they began to communicate using symbols. They carved geometric patterns into blocks of red ochre. They made beads from ostrich eggshells. They were not just surviving, they were building a shared identity. They were telling stories. They were creating the social glue, the tribal networks of exchange and mutual aid that allowed different bands to help each other when food was scarce. Empathy and alliance became our primary survival traits. Eventually, the skies cleared. The ash settled into the soil, the volcanic winter broke, and the grasslands returned. And when the sun finally shone again on a green world, the few thousand survivors walked out of the shadows. But they were not the same humans who had entered the winter. They were forged by fire. They were smarter, more cooperative, and equipped with a cultural and technological kit that made them unstoppable. Around 60,000 years ago, a small group of these survivors walked out of Africa and crossed the Red Sea. They carried the genetic code of those few thousand stadium dwellers. And from that tiny, resilient root, they populated the world. Every language spoken today, every empire built, every technology invented, and every dream dreamt traces its origin back to that handful of survivors who refused to die in the dark. Your lineage is not a story of unbroken, easy dominance. It is a story of a miracle. It is a story of a tiny spark that was nearly snuffed out by a mountain, but managed to keep burning. So when you look at the challenges of our modern world, the crises that seem too big to solve, the futures that feel too dark to face, remember the stadium. Remember the ash-choked skies of 70,000 years ago, and the few thousand ancestors who looked at a dying planet and chose to keep walking. You wake up when your body is ready. The sky is dark, but as you look east, you see a thin, bright line of gold breaking through the gray dust. The sun is coming back, and you are still here.